Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha Madhava ki jai. Hare Krishna and welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class this morning. We continue to read from Canto 5, Chapter 15, Text 11. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tachochayam Udirajet Nastapareshu Bhatrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashluke Bhaktir Bhavadinaishtiki. Okay, we're going to verse. I just chant the whole because Chandamsi akamasya chayasya kaman dudhuhur ajahur ato balim nripa pratyanchita yuti dharmena vipra yada shisham shashtam amsham paritya Chandamsya kamasya chayasya kaman. Hast du schon? Duduhur ajarhur ato balim nripa Pradyanchitita yudidharmena vipra Yada shisham shashtam amsham paritya. Chandamsya kamasya chayasya kaman Duduhur ajarhur ato balim nripa Pradyanchita yuti dharmena vipra Yada shisham shashtam amsham paritya Chandamsi akamasya chayasya kamam Dudu Rajarur Atupalim Nipa. Sorry. Pradyanchita yudhi dharmena vipra yada shisham shashtam amsham paritya. Still want or 5, 15, 11. Good, gives me some time to. Okay, then we go word by word. Chandamsi, all the different parts of the Vedas. Akamasya, of one who has no desire for personal sense gratification. Cha, also. Yasya, whose. Kaman, all desirables. Duduhu, yielded. Acharuhu, offered. Ato, thus. Balim, presentation. Nripaha, all the kings. Pratyanchitaha, being satisfied by his fighting. In opposition. Yudhi, in the war. Dharmena, by religious principles. Vipraha, all the brahmanas. Yada, when. Ashisham, of blessings. Shashtam amsham, 1/6. Paretya, in the next life. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Although King Gaya had no personal desire for sense gratification, all his desires were fulfilled by virtue of his performance of Vedic rituals. All the kings with whom Maharaj Gaya had to fight were forced to fight on religious principles. They were very satisfied with his fighting, and they would present all kinds of gifts to him. Similarly, all the brahmanas in his kingdom were very satisfied with King Gaya's munificent charities. Consequently, the brahmanas contributed 1/6 of their pious activities for King Gaya's benefit in the next life. Purport. As a kshatriya or emperor, Maharaj Gaya sometimes had to fight with subordinate kings to maintain his government. But the subordinate kings were not dissatisfied with him because they knew that he fought for religious principles. Consequently, they accepted their subordination and offered all kinds of gifts to him. Similarly, the brahmanas who performed Vedic rituals were so satisfied with the king that they very readily agreed to part with 1/6 of their pious activities for his benefit in the next life. Thus the brahmanas and kshatriyas were all satisfied with Maharaj Gaya because of his proper administration. In other words, Maharaj Gaya satisfied the kshatriya kings by his fighting and satisfied the brahmanas by his charities. The Vaishyas were also encouraged by kind words and affectionate dealings, and due to Maharaj Gaya's constant sacrifices, the Shudras were satisfied by sumptuous food and charity. In this way, Maharaj Gaya kept all the citizens very satisfied. When brahmanas and saintly persons are honored, they part with their pious activities, giving them to those who honor them and render them service. Therefore, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:34, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. One should try to approach a spiritual master submissively and render service unto him. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svavarantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vagisha Yasya Varane Lakshmiryasya Chavakshasi Yasya Te Hridaye Samvit Tam Narasimham Maham Bhaje Pralada Hridayaladam Bhaktavitya Vidaram Sharatinduruchim Vande Parintravandanam Harim. The verse again. Although King Gaya had no personal desire for sense gratification, all his desires were fulfilled by virtue of his performance of Vedic rituals. All the kings with whom Maharaj Gaya had to fight were forced to fight on religious principles. They were very satisfied with his fighting, and they would present all kinds of gifts to him. Similarly, all the brahmanas in his kingdom were very satisfied with King Gaya's magnificent charities. Consequently, the brahmanas contributed a sixth of the pious activities for King Gaya's benefit in the next life. So we are in a chapter, the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is called The Glories of the Descendants of King Priyavrata, which in turn is a descendant of Bharat Maharaj, or King Bharat. So the Srimad Bhagavatam dedicates a lot of its content to the kings of ancient times and how they exemplify ideal leadership based on Vedic principles, or on spiritual principles, as we would say. And here, like, we can see again how this, if a person of such caliber who is truly embodying Vedic knowledge and Vedic standards of living, is pleasing to practically anyone he deals with, according to the particular type of, let's say, socio-cultural relationship. You know, said the Kshatriyas on the equal level, the administrators whom he had to fight with sometimes in order to maintain his administration, it is said, were satisfied with his fighting. And it seems maybe perhaps a bit of a contradiction. If they were so satisfied with him, why do they fight him? And also the brahmanas were very satisfied with the way he performed Vedic rituals and sacrifices, doing it properly, so to speak. So he embodied something that seems to be naturally respectable to others who follow the same kind of culture. You know, because we can see there's a difference between demanding respect or authority and commanding respect and authority. You know, if a person truly embodies certain principles or qualities, naturally others will respect that person. Not just someone claiming based on a, let's say, political post or something, I'm now minister of that or king of that, therefore respect me and honor me. It has something to it, it's a position of authority and people will obey, but it doesn't mean in heart they truly appreciate or respect that leader, you know. But naturally, even on the other hand, they might accept someone as leader who has no official post, because they understand this person's character, qualities, competence is something that resonates deeply within ourselves, with a certain truth we know. We understand if someone is something based on what this person embodies. Nowadays we have the opposite. You don't have to necessarily embody something, you just dress as whatever, like also in politics, because this is about kings. It's a situation also in Europe or in Germany particularly. People are not competent at all for certain offices, but they can occupy them by, let's say, by hook and crook. They manipulate themselves into positions, but they're not fit for, and people are very dissatisfied. Contrary to King Gaya, you know, they feel like so upset and so frustrated. But people use authority to suppress even the critics, you know, because they're very, justly criticized for their incompetence and really, bad government. But they use their position of authority to hold people down, to force them to accept something which is unacceptable. And that's not a Vedic way of things. There was even we know reports from the Bhagavatam or other scriptures where the king was very approachable by regular citizens. they could come with their complaints directly to the king, even get an audience, and he was supposed to listen. And this could also work because there were not much complaints. And just imagine you have millions of citizens, and then there would be a lot of problems. The king, his only business would be to receive the complaints, right? So, but there were sometimes something based on the accounts we have here in the Bhagavatam, where, let's say, a Brahmana is dissatisfied because it was said, for example, if a child dies or like there was a miscarriage, it was considered the king is not really pious, not really pure. It's his fault. So they could go to the king and complain, hey, this happened, so something is wrong with your performance here. It's unimaginable for us to consider even such a standard. How could someone be responsible for this, based on what he does? So there's a whole complex philosophy, theology, like worldview behind that in the Vedic scriptures, which is for people who are not familiar with that, like they cannot really put that together, Why would you blame like a king now for this person having a miscarriage, for example? So it provides a lot of, theistic worldview, which involves karma, reincarnation, collective karma. So there's so much to consider, and who is influencing what to what degree. So the king is a very influential position. It's considered to be also the representative of God or Krishna. Said the monarch, Krishna himself says, you must know, I'm the monarch, the king. So he's supposed to be the father of a society, nation, whatever. So there's the emperor, King Gaia. We say in German it's the Kaiser, someone who is even like a king of kings, we could say. And there are other kings like who rule their nations. King goes even down to, in Vedic understanding, to a village. Even someone who rules a certain little district of land is considered a type of king, a kshatriya. And it said here, Maharaj Gaia forced all those who did not apparently agree with his leadership to fight on religious principles. And still, this kind of gave me to think, what does that mean? How does he force others to fight on religious principles? And for me, like my consideration or my angle of vision was like to see, based on his character, like this commanding respect. So how to say, let's maybe compare it to a debate. Debate has certain rules. It's not just arguing like wildly with each other, accusing each other. It has to have certain standards of facts of how the thing is structured and how you present arguments. And we set a ground. If we debate, then like this, because this is the proper way. You don't just go and argue wildly with someone and accuse people. You have to bring facts, for example. You have to apply logic, and so on. And similarly, understand like if you truly embody that, if you argue with reason based on truth, naturally you are kind of superior than to someone who just concocts all kinds of stuff and says things that have no ground. So in a similar way, I would imagine like that King Gaia, like representing a really religious person, a truly Vedic king, could demand, or like kind of by his presence or influence, Shakti, as we say, do that. Because it's also said, like, for example, King Prithu, it is said like there are certain cities or mystic opulences that also manifest in saintly kings and great Vaishnavas and Devatas and so on. And one of these cities is that he can make everything do his saying. Like there's a Shakti, like the instruction was not a question, are you willing to do it or not? It was somehow, there was a power in it. If it was said, if the king instructed, this is to be done, it happened. This is kind of a mystic potency even. That a king has like the ability, like if he's pure enough, that his instructions are being followed. This is like also something maybe to think about, how can this work? But it's the power of truth, I would assume, based on what we hear from the Vedic scriptures. Truth is sattva. Sattva guna is also the purest mode, is superior to the lower modes, and can also counteract the reactions. And I think if you hear something that is really true in essence, and in our heart it resonates, we know it, even we feel like we struggle with it, but we cannot resist it. We cannot resist what is true, right? If something is true, it's, irrevocable. We cannot deny it. I mean, we can try to, but actually we cannot, internally we cannot say it's not true. It's like in itself a power, you know. So therefore we also consider, we wanted to be truthful. And also authorities, or like people in position of leadership, that's one of their essential qualities. Brahmins, not just Brahmins, also Kshatriyas, they have to be truthful, honest. Because that's natural. That's actually the nature of things. The lie or the dishonesty is not natural. It tries to avoid natural things based on crookedness. And I think some kings might be sometimes in a position, they see there is a leader who is really truthful, who is really pious, who is pure, who is religious, but and they accept that this is actually, that's a true leader, and naturally I think I should accept this person as superior, because it happens. I think if you really meet someone who embodies good qualities, I think naturally you feel like, oh yeah, to this person surrender is a big word, but at least I could follow. I can respect that person. I can make myself subordinate. But there's this thing called weakness of heart. And this we find in the Mahabharata, for example, in King Dhritarashtra. He's even said his name is already a bad omen, you know. Someone knows what his name means? Dhritarashtra. Someone who steals another's land. That's the meaning of his name. And he did. Because he didn't want to give the half of the kingdom, which was rightfully the Pandavas, he didn't want to give. And the weakness of heart in his case was, he was, in one sense, attached to his own position. I mean, he was blind and therefore had a disadvantage that disqualified him as a king, which, although arguably in the Mahabharata is not so clear as it seems, because he could compensate his blindness with so many other qualities. He was very strong, he was very intelligent, and so on. So he could fight. It was not that he was like a cripple, like with a stick walking around, you know. It was like he was still a powerful person. So there was arguably, if this is really such a strong argument or not, but it was at the end like this. So he was attached, but then also he had a weakness to his son, who was a really bad person, Duryodhana. You know, also his name, I forgot what it meant, but also nothing good. And he was like the opposite of King Gaia, and didn't want to follow really Vedic principles and rule. So it requires someone then to, let's call it, dominate the situation. If a king, maybe based on weakness of heart, or someone is not accepting a rule that is actually better than one's own. So therefore was fight. But it was, of course, avoided if possible. We see also the Rajasuya sacrifice in the Mahabharata, like many thousands of years ago. The standard was like a white horse, white horse, right, was sent through the lands, and I think it was considered, if the horse just like was passing through and it was not stopped or whatever, the kings, it meant we accept the rule, you know. And so in this way, there was like kind of the, the announcement, yeah, and you could decide whether you agree or not. So, and then if not, then also the Pandavas, they went out. There's a whole big part of the Mahabharata where Arjuna, Bhima, and so on, actually all the Pandavas, Nakula and Sahadeva, to conquer those kings who were not willing to accept Maharaj Yudhishthira's rule. So it is there, the fighting. It's not always like on agreement alone. And here it said like he fought on religious principles. And this is something important maybe to consider nowadays, since there's a lot of war going on, and religion is involved. Concept of religions are involved, and which are not at all according to what we understand from the Vedic scriptures, or Bhagavatam. And there's a really important distinction between a war and terror. Right? Also, because the Bhagavad Gita seems to be problematic also nowadays because it seems to encourage religious violence. Because Arjuna was encouraged to fight based on religious principles for a higher cause. And there's a lot of complexity to the topic. But let's, for example, just look at how these kings considered how a fight is to be done. One thing what was done, like for example the Battle of Kurukshetra, consciously the war was put away from cities, away from the from the civilians, that no one unnecessarily gets hurt, because they invoke weapons that we hear about, so-called celestial weapons that were powerful, like beyond our imagination. And this was one thing. Also involved were not just anybody. Kshatriyas were particularly designated, and they could also involve certain types of people that belonged to the Shudra class. They were assisting Kshatriyas, like charioteers, they were, for example. But not just anybody were involved. And then it was clear, you don't shoot enemies in the back if they flee the battlefield. There were certain codes of honor, like how a battle was done, and it was consciously started in the morning, it was ended at nightfall. And it's even described at night they were kind of friends, or at least like peacefully allies, Because it is a difference if you have principles, you fight for them, or if you have personal hatred for another person. That seems to be sometimes nowadays maybe difficult to hold apart. But that's something, if you study the scriptures, it's important. And also it's not like that they just wait for, oh yeah, let's fight, The Mahabharata also tells us so many endeavors were done, peace missions of Krishna himself, the Pandavas, diplomats were sent, Brahmins were sent, and Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, they just wouldn't give in, they would insist on an unjust situation. So that's really the last means, the last. Any pious king would avoid killing unnecessary. But sometimes that's the nature of the world. There will always be people who are, follow their lower instincts, want to exploit others, and even have to be stopped at the end by killing, perhaps. But it's not desirable. So, and there was also, there were these religious principles which were clear, based on which this was fought. And that was pleasing if someone really follows rules and is not just a vicious, hateful, assassin. That's a different story. Hare Krishna. So, if someone like Marjgara comes, he can also impress those who might be weak of heart or wicked, whatever. He obviously managed to, he commanded respect and authority by his own purity, by being a representative of Krishna and being a compassionate king, like a father figure. And also at the same time, what he does, he performs sacrifices for the benefit of society, and therefore the Brahmanas were very satisfied or happy with him. Because why sacrifices are done, it's for the well-being, for the spiritual well-being, also economic well-being. This is Vishnu's sacrifices are being done to please Vishnu, the Supreme Lord, and also Brahma already is handed down. Also in the Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned how these sacrifices ensure the prosperity of the people. So it's a give and take principle. To say, don't just take from Krishna, don't just take from the world, don't exploit the creation for yourself, but it's about like acknowledging the true owner. Ishavasyam idam sarvam, yat kincha jagadam jagat, tena chak tena bhungchita, makrida kashyas vidhanam. Krishna possesses everything in this world, what is alive or not alive, and one should take only the thing that is designated as a quota for oneself, not more, knowing well to whom it belongs. So how do we argue that everything is Krishna? The philosophical argument is Isha, the Supreme Lord. He is the origin of all energies, material energies, spiritual energies. Everything that is Isha. And is also maintained by him. If he wouldn't wish that something exists, it wouldn't. And he maintains also us. He owns everything because everything is energy, is maintained by him. And therefore, he is the true owner. Therefore, we cannot consider ourselves true owners because nothing depends on us in its existence. Not even this body. We think, oh yeah, it depends on whether I eat and sleep and do. But that's not the thing. We just use already something that is provided to us, given to us, and the processes of maintaining the body are not done by us. If you eat something, you maybe just do the choice of what you eat and you chew, but your digestion, you don't do anything about it. Your body is doing something that you cannot observe it, it happens. This is because the super soul is in there, or the demigods, they control the functions. And so we understand everything is being governed by the Supreme Lord. And Yakya is also an acknowledgement of that, to say, I also see myself as part of the Lord, and the creation is Krishna's, and sacrifice means I give back, I reciprocate with that I receive. Because otherwise it's considered we are just thieves, if we just take and not appreciate the Lord by giving sacrifice. Not that he needs that. It's not about Krishna needs ghee in the fire, or grains, or all that. It's about, he wants to see that we understand our natural position and what is ours and what is not. And then there's peace. Because based on trying to steal, so to say, the creation from Krishna, this is like the root cause of evil. But if we unite under the understanding, under the philosophy that everything is God and we are all God's parts and parcels, and truly understand ourselves as such, then there can be a peaceful coexistence. But this cannot be simply forced upon another. This is about understanding. That's about being conscious. You can force maybe someone to accept externally a certain faith, but that's not the point. It's about awakening consciousness. We also always, in the morning, we pray to the spiritual master, Divne Gyan, Drida Prokrashito, that within the heart, knowledge has to be awoken. We have to become conscious living entities who understand the faith, not just blindly follow a faith. So because then we are truly spiritualists. And if you simply say, now I designate myself as Hindu or as Muslim or as Christian, and that makes me very pious, and in the eyes of God I'm the best. No, he wants to see whether you develop yourself. If you want to be great, actually, we have to invest in our growth, spiritual growth, personal growth, developing ourselves, because then we impress others. Simply by having a claim, because I associate myself to a faith or group or political party, will not do the job. But if you truly develop ourselves, we become integer. Say in German, say in English also. We have integrity because we stand for something, we do the work on ourselves, and that makes us also naturally humble, because if you truly do the work on yourself, you will meet your limitations, you will meet your shortcomings, you'll be aware of them. And then you can say, okay, that's where I stand and I got work to do. And the more we do that, and the more we develop ourselves, others will perceive that. And they will also resonate with who we are, what we are. So no one responds well to people who just impose themselves on her. Hey, don't you know I'm so old, I'm born in this family, I have like this and that status. People just get annoyed. Maybe externally they say, yes, very nice and good, but internally they will not like you. Or it's just naturally you will not. Right? So it's about being yourself, embodying the values like truthfulness, simplicity, peacefulness, purity, knowledge, wisdom, and so on. So that makes people attractive, and not just like a stubborn type of faith which turns into fanaticism. So yes. So March, Gaia, as we said, like pleases everyone. Also the shooters are mentioned in the purport. They were satisfied because from the sacrifices there was also sumptuous food and charity for them. And in return, that's interesting, the Brahmins said they were ready to give parts of their pious credits for all their activities to the king. So that's a great blessing. If someone is ready to whatever great works I do, pious works I do, it's considered we accumulate a karma. So, but you can kind of, as I understand it, in front of Vishnu, in front of the sacrifice, you can declare for whom do you perform a sacrifice, for example. If a priest says, for this family, for this person, at that date, for that purpose, I do sacrifice. And you can also say, apparently, part of this benefit goes to, you declare to Vishnu, I want to designate parts of my, I would say, benefits from the sacrifice to such and such. So here they gave it to the king because they were so pleased with him. So that's a very powerful reciprocation. If someone is ready to naturally give parts of his own, how to say, hard-earned benefits to you because he feels like you're a great person. That's very powerful. So again, that should be our aim, to impress people in their hearts so much with a good character, with a good personality, that they wish us well. And that's what also Krishna consciousness is about, what Srila Prabhupada embodied. He also rightfully signed his letters, your ever well-wisher, because he truly was. And people felt that. And they reciprocated, dedicated themselves to him, to the mission, and to the instructions. So it's a powerful thing to do. And yes, this was one part. I also had in mind to speak a bit on the Mahabharata, because on the religious principles, the truthfulness we mentioned, but I don't know if it now fits in here. But I will see at this point now if there are any comments, questions, to that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's something to carefully consider. Because on both sides there's a need. As you say, rightfully, Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhacha Devi Ki Jai, Shishi Gauranitai Ki Jai. What is the sign of advancement? And we understand from Shastras, it's exactly the certain characteristics, qualities, part of it, humility, pridelessness, steadiness, and so on. So if these qualities manifest, that's important to, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, like one verse, we should hang around our neck, like from his Shikshashtakam, Trinata Pi, Sunichinataro Api Suishana. So that's part of everyone has that mission, whether senior or junior. So both should consider this mantra, this shloka, and what it means. Amanina manadena ketanya sadhari. If I don't expect sorry, any honor or demand honor from myself, and this can be subtle, it can be also rightfully social etiquette, because it is also important to show youngers explicitly, not just implicitly, explicitly, hey, for example, this is off, check yourself, and this was disrespectful, for example, because sometimes based on pride or ignorance, people do, and someone has to tell them also, this is about like whoever is now in a proper position to do that. So I think it requires the openness also for the youngers to be also corrected and reflect on their own pride and ego. And the same thing is for those who are elders. We also need to check what is our advancement. It's like some may have certain routines, and simply because of time passes, and it doesn't equal development. So maybe that's something everyone has to consider. Like it's not like how much time have I spent in let's say in a movement or in services or being around like that, sondern what happened in that time qualitatively that really transformed my consciousness, my being, what qualities I truly develop, or did I maybe stagnate at some point? And this is visible, for example, people feel, and I think it's always what I understand from what Mahabharata teaches us, somehow the dealings between, let's say, the Pandavas and also their elders were always respectful, even if the elders acted like improper. There were like mistakes being done by Bhishma, by Dronacharya. At the end, they fought against him, but till the end, they didn't give up the respect. Of course, they had a really strong bond. They were really intimately connected. It was not just some person. But respect can mean many things. Respect can be also on a distant respect. It can be outspoken. It could be a good challenge to still somehow or other maybe render some service to a person, to check one's own pride, to always I think it's a consideration also what exactly is happening in the exchange between a so-called senior and a so-called junior. It's mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, in this case, it's important to remember, like what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Anudvega Rajam Vakyam, Satyam Priya Hitam Jayat Svadhyaya Prasanam Cheva Vanmayam Tabochete, the austerities of speech. In the first place, it said Anudvega Rajam Vakyam, Vacham Rakyam. At least it says non-agitating speech. And Srila Prabhupada comments, a teacher or like a person should not try to instruct others who don't accept this person as a teacher, because it's agitating. So it must be also clear, not automatically because you're the teacher of everyone. That's not the attitude I understand from, of course you're a senior, but it's like, how to say, who instructs you, it's also a bit of a personal matter, and at some point you choose particular, like your shiksha, your diksha, or like the seniors you involve. And not just anyone can put himself there and say, I'm now your instructing whatever elder. I think there's a misunderstanding that, because a humble person, don't consider themselves the authority of everyone, all right? Only those who maybe approach him who has a relationship. I think it's based on relationship. If you have some relationship, appreciation, then this works, but simply like based on status, it's difficult. People will not necessarily just accept. And as we said, also the Brahmins, how to say, they're also a bit, also selective. They don't just go around and instruct everyone. It's also a matter, Prabhupada quotes the verse, Tadvidi Pratina Pari Prashnina Sevaya, at the end. And if this person is inquisitive to you, well, yes, please instruct this person, be generous, be kind. Because Brahmins is also in the Brahma Samhita is mentioned. Naturally, if they feel respected or like appreciated in their knowledge, their compassion or mercy even increases and they like to share. It's a natural reciprocation. But if a person doesn't come to you or shows like, I would like to hear and learn from you, you don't impose yourself. That's not based, what I understand also what a Brahmin or Vaishnava is. Unless you're a preacher and you try to invite people, but then you also be careful to how to do that. Yeah. You try to inspire them, not just instruct them. Yeah. I think the best thing is like if you really, as you say, the best preaching is to embody that, what we think or what we expect others to do as well. Then we have a lot of work ourselves. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other comments or questions? That's how I understand it, because I was thinking about how do they do that? Is it something you can take and give? I assume it must be like at that point that you dedicate it consciously in a sacrifice and let Vishnu know, I would like to dedicate parts of whatever comes from that to the king. Yeah, would be worthy of research perhaps, but this is like what would be my concoction on that. Hare Krishna, thanks for participating. All right, then we complete here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.